As Hitler rose to power and prominence in Germany, he went after those who he and the Nazis deemed to be inferior to Aryan Germans. The persecution of the Jews began in Germany with policies that limited freedoms and what they were allowed to do. It began with bizarre restrictions such as not allowing Jews to sit on the same park benches as non-Jews, or not allowing them to keep pets. Eventually the persecution resulted in the Holocaust that killed an estimated 6 million from 1941 to 1945. It was clear that Adolf Hitler wanted to drive the Jews out of Europe and off the face of the planet. However, there was one Jew that he did save, and even gave free passage to leave Germany and escape the persecution. Today we look at Hitler's Jewish doctor, Edmund Bloch, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Edmund Bloch was born in Frauenburg, which today is in the Czech Republic, on the 30th of January 1872. He was raised in a Jewish family, and then when of age went to study at university, studying medicine in Prague, before going on to serve as a medical officer in the Austrian army. After leaving the army in 1901, he opened up his own private doctor's practice in Linz, marrying and then having children. His doctor's practice was situated in the Baroque house of 12 Landstrasse in Linz, where he also lived with his family. Whilst here he was very well respected, and he was a man who reached out to all social classes. The lower classes held him in high esteem, as did the higher classes, and he was known for going the extra mile, being on call at all times to treat his patients should he need to. He was a compassionate man who genuinely cared, riding through Linz on his horse and carriage, to tend to patients even in the middle of the night if there was an emergency. It was in Linz that Bloch met the Hitlers for the first time, and it was during home visits that he would meet a young Adolf Hitler. It was a young Adolf who first benefited from a home visit from Dr. Bloch. In 1904 he became seriously ill and had been forced to stay in bed, suffering with an issue with his lungs. Because of this he was forced to leave schooling, but whilst Bloch reviewed Adolf's files, he noticed he had only been previously treated for colds and tonsillitis, and that before he was in good health. It was through these visits to the Hitler home that Bloch became close with the family. It was mostly Hitler's mother who Bloch is most famously known for treating, and he said of Hitler's mother Clara, "She was a simple, modest, kindly woman. She was tall, had brownish hair, which she kept neatly plaited, and a long oval face with beautifully expressive grey-blue eyes." In 1907 Clara Hitler was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she became seriously ill. Bloch wrote, "One day Frau Hitler came to visit me during my morning office hours. She complained of a pain in her chest, speaking in a quiet, hushed voice. The pain, she said, had been great enough to keep her awake nights on end. She had neglected to seek medical aid because she thought the pain would pass. A later examination showed Frau Hitler had an extensive tumour of her breast. She was then operated on. However, Bloch also noticed a strong bond between Klara and her son Adolf, saying, "His love for his mother was the most striking feature. Whilst he was not a mother's boy in the usual sense, I have never witnessed a closer attachment." The illness Clara Hitler suffered caused her a great pain, but also her son suffered too, and Bloch said how he noticed the anguish on the young boy's face. He said, "I shall never forget Clara Hitler during those days. She was 48 at the time, wasted by disease, concerned about what would happen to her family after her approaching death. She was given Iodoform as a treatment, an awful smelling and painful treatment administered by Bloch. Usually this was rather costly, however Bloch for the family charged a reduced price, and even sometimes offered them free care and doses of the treatment. Although the treatment was rather ineffective, it did show Bloch's willingness to try and help, and out of the goodness of his heart treating Clara for free before she died. Bloch even attended Adolf Hitler's mother's funeral, and noted how Adolf wore a dark suit and a loosely knotted cravat. He stepped forward and took my hand, looking into my eyes, and he said, "I shall be grateful to you forever." It was through his kindness in their hour of need that Adolf Hitler had a great degree of admiration and thanks for Edmund Bloch. He wrote of his everlasting gratitude to the doctor, and in 1908 wrote to him on a postcard assuring him of this gratitude, and he gave him a number of handmade gifts, one of which was a large wall painting. Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf of his suffering at the time, saying, It was the conclusion of a long and painful illness, which from the beginning left me with little hope of recovery. Yet it was a dreadful blow, particularly for me. His mother remained in his memory, with Adolf carrying a photograph of her wherever he went, and some even claim when the Fuhrer of Germany took his own life, as Berlin fell to the Red Army, that a photograph of his mother was in his hand when he pulled the trigger. Now the rise of Adolf Hitler from where he came from can be described as meteoric, but as soon as he entered power in Germany, he began to target Jews in a number of different ways. It was a persecution of them which makes Hitler's Nazi Party and the dictator the horrific and disgusting Third Reich that they became. Laws were introduced to categorise and classify Jews by their heritage, and the persecution eventually resulted in ghettos, mass deportations and mass genocide and extermination inside of the concentration camps. The Holocaust sought to kill all Jews inside Europe. However, Hitler would show mercy upon the doctor who treated his mother in Linz all those years ago. Hitler replaced the Austrian Chancellor, and at the time after the union of Germany and Austria, Bloch's medical practice was closed. He wrote to Hitler asking for help, and Hitler listened, placing him under special protection by the Gestapo. Hitler said, "Dr. Bloch is an Edeljude, or noble Jew. If all Jews were like him, then there would be no Jewish question." He was the only one in Linz with this privilege. The authorities permitted Bloch and his wife to live in their home freely for 3 years, and Bloch was even allowed to offer short-term refuge for some displaced Jews. Bloch was also allowed to renew his passport, something Jews were banned from doing, and he lived a life free from fear, assuming the local Gestapo regularly spoke with Hitler and his government to allow this. In 1940 he asked Hitler if he had permission to join his daughter in New York, and Hitler agreed, allowing Bloch to emigrate to live in the Bronx. He was not permitted to practice medicine in America, however was allowed in Germany to sell his home for market value, at a time when Jews were having their homes seized by the SS. The Blochs were also allowed to take more Reichmarks out of the country than was usual for Jews, and upon arriving in America, he wrote an article on Hitler. In this he described what Hitler was like as a child, and from this we learned so much about him. He was also interviewed by the office that came before the CIA to gain information about Hitler's childhood. In these writings and statements he spoke positively about Hitler's childhood and said, "To a very large extent, the boy lived within himself, but what dreams he dreamed I do not know." Edward Bloch was allowed great freedoms within a restrictive time for Jews, and the persecution ramped up. He was a man who was obviously greatly respected by Hitler, and a man who for his kindness in the Führer's time of need was given protection for the rest of his life. He died in June 1945, barely a month after Hitler took his own life. It was clear Hitler kept an eye on Bloch during the mass deportations. However, his story is one which is interesting. However, it's important not to forget the suffering of so many during the Holocaust. Bloch's story is an extremely rare one, and it is almost 1 in 6 million. The evils of the Holocaust must be remembered for years to come, along with the victims of Hitler's Third Reich. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.